Lick. I still harbor feelings for her to some extent, indicating that while my love for my wife was deeper, life must continue. But should it continue with Ivy? Is it worth taking the chance? What would you do in my shoes? From the moment I laid eyes on Ivy, I felt an instant connection, mixed with a hint of apprehension. Perhaps I'm more in tune with the enigmatic forces of the universe than most, or maybe it's the scars from past experiences making me cautious. Now, as Ivy stands before me, pledging her eternal companionship, my instincts scream to flee from this situation. Yet, a conflicting impulse suggests leaving, but not without a final embrace. However, no part of me is seriously considering her proposition, although my heart seems to disagree. Let's revisit the onset of this complex saga to shed light on my hesitancy towards committing to this mesmerizing woman. Recalling my first encounter with Ivy, I was a young math instructor at a local community college, and she was in one of my remedial classes. At 26, Ivy was slightly older than the typical student, and I, at 24, wasn't much older myself. But Ivy wasn't just notable for her age, she was distinct in every sense. Ivy was, in simple terms, a standout presence. Now, you might be imagining a tall, curvaceous blonde, but let's align with reality. Ivy is petite, with modest features, and dark, captivating hair that would take days to fully describe. Her hair, long, thick, and lustrous, cascaded in waves down her back, animatedly accompanying her movements. Her eyes, always gleaming with mischief, whether in joy or frustration, seemed designed to remind us that she lived for enjoyment. Her nose, small and unassuming, and her lips, strikingly full and expressive, added to her unique allure, devoid of any artificial enhancements. Just looking at her, one could only imagine the allure of her expressive features. Her lips, always so expressive, would often capture my attention, even when discussing mathematics or algebra. Ivy is notably slender, a trait she self-consciously remarks on, though it seems to concern only her. Her figure is a paradox, with a slim waist that dramatically widens at the hips, a playful irony of nature. Ivy's body seems to be a blend of contrasting elements, with a notably ample lower half that starkly contrasts her petite upper body. Her posterior is remarkably round, embodying the very definition of a bubble butt. "Did you know that there are no rules in this school that would prevent you from going out to eat with me?" she said, breaking the ice. "Do you realize you're nowhere near passing this class?" I inquired, somewhat taken aback. "How do those two things even relate?" she questioned, her voice ringing with laughter. Ivy's laughter wasn't ordinary, it was as though she laughed with her whole being, not just her lungs or vocal cords. Her head tilted back, her hair dancing with each note of her amusement. "Are you suggesting I want to spend time with you to improve my grades?" She chuckled. "Check this out," she continued, handing me a piece of paper. She had registered again for the class that very morning, indicating her determination. "Math isn't my strong suit," she admitted with a giggle. "I'm giving it my all, and honestly, I'm doing better in your class than in any math class before. But I wasn't expecting to pass, so I plan to retake my math courses." "Oh," I responded, realizing I might have missed a significant chance. Lately, I'd been captivated by thoughts of Ivy, and now I seemed to have fumbled an opportunity with her. "Darn," she said with a grin. "I've really made a mess of things, haven't I? I've been under the impression that you liked me and were just too reserved to act on it." She gave me a thoughtful look. "Maybe it's transference," she suggested. "Transference?" I echoed, confused. "Yes," she explained, "it's a psychological term. It refers to the idea that people might project their feelings, believing others feel the same way. I thought since I liked you a lot, you might feel the same." As she stood and walked towards me, her casual outfit accentuated her form with each step. Her presence was striking, and her proximity only heightened my awareness of her. "Are you sure you wouldn't like to grab a bite to eat? Maybe as friends, or to discuss how I can avoid failing your class again?" she teased. In that moment, the mythical beings of ancient stories suddenly made sense to me. I felt torn. Part of me wanted to stay away from Ivy, while another part was overwhelmingly drawn to her. "I could go for something to eat," I found myself saying. Ivy accompanied me to the parking lot, chatting happily along the way. She explained her reasoning for wanting to follow me to the restaurant, to avoid returning for her car later. She shared her embarrassment over her old Chevy S10 truck, aspiring to replace it with a more eco-friendly model once she could afford it after graduation. She admired the university's encouragement for staff to drive environmentally friendly vehicles, mentioning Professor Morton's Toyota Prius. When we stopped, she curiously asked why. I unveiled my car. Ivy, puzzled, pointed out the discrepancy with a playful tap of her foot. I joked about the car's green paint and decorative leaf designs, claiming it was eco-friendly in its own right. She flashed a larger smile, and we shared a moment of playful banter, misunderstanding the leaf designs as Ivy. Our conversation laid the foundation for our friendship, intentionally noting it as such, not a romantic relationship. After enjoying dinner, we spent the evening in deep conversation on my porch swing, extending the time with her babysitter to prolong our chat. Though the evening was filled with a palpable chemistry, we kept the connection platonic. We talked about everything, finding an easy harmony in our exchange. As the night wound down, we sat closely, sharing a tender, yet reserved moment. Ivy playfully challenged the notion of us being just friends after such a meaningful night, calling it the best date she ever had. Yet we maintained a respectful boundary, cherishing the connection we had built. Mine too, Ivy, I said. But this ... you're really special and I don't want to mess it up. Oh, she replied. You are so sweet. After one last hug, she headed towards her truck. Watching her walk down my driveway, I checked my chest, half jokingly, from the intensity of her embrace. She turned and caught my gaze, smiling. Last chance, she teased. I shook my head, saying, nope, feeling a bit silly. Don't worry, she called from her truck. You'll have plenty of other chances. From that night on, Ivy and I grew closer. She was the kindest person I'd ever met, always ready to help anyone in need. I began to think she might be the one I wanted to spend my life with. Yet, we hadn't taken our relationship to the next level, largely due to my hesitations. As I got to know her, people warned me about her past. Some things I already knew because Ivy was open with me. However, some revelations were unexpected and not typically discussed in casual conversation. I knew Ivy was 26 with 3 children, Jasmine, 10, Rose, 7, and Michael, 5. She had shared that the children had different fathers and she was often in legal battles over child support. Ivy worked at a grocery store and attended school at night, including my math class, where her performance had dropped since we started dating. She revealed plans to switch to a different math class next semester, noticing my disappointment. You can still tutor me, she assured, but I can't sit through your class again. Why not? I inquired. Ivy, you don't have to date me just because I'm your teacher. I know, silly, she laughed. It's not about the teaching. You're a great teacher, but you're an even better boyfriend. In class, I just want to gaze at you, daydreaming about us together, but I respect your professional ethics. Her words surprised and flattered me, making me realize she genuinely saw us as a couple. But honestly, Tim, she calls me Tim because that's my name. I'm not entirely sure I should be telling you this yet, but I feel like you're the person I'm meant to spend my life with. As more students began entering the classroom, she moved closer and whispered to me, imagine, once I'm no longer failing your class, I'll be completely yours. You'll have my full attention, always. Before I could respond, she turned and walked to her seat. I wrote a few problems on the board and asked the students to solve them before starting the lecture. I wandered the room, assisting and correcting students as needed. When I reached Ivy, I discreetly placed a note on her desk before moving on. I had written it earlier when assigning the problems. It was simple, just 3 words and a name, I love you, Ivy. Looking back after a while, I noticed Ivy smiling through tears, a rare expression of mixed emotions. Soon after, she hurriedly packed her belongings and left the classroom. I felt puzzled and slightly upset, wondering why she had gone and if she would return. My feelings about Ivy have always been complex. Understanding her took time, as she's not someone you can easily categorize. Some cultures revere an earth goddess who is nurturing yet can also unleash destructive natural events, illustrating a paradoxical nature. Ivy reminded me of this duality, sweet and caring, yet unpredictable and wild. She never officially became my girlfriend, a term she used rather than me. In her view, we were a couple, an idea shaped by her unique perspective, which often seemed unfounded and changeable. Despite passing her a note professing my love, my feelings were complicated. Love, after all, has its boundaries and doesn't always define relationships in conventional terms. I truly cared for Ivy. Her beauty and sweetness were as genuine as I've ever depicted, embodying an almost mythical allure. On one side, she was the caring and gentle person I've known. Yet, in another light, Ivy seemed to captivate numerous admirers. It was astonishing how many would approach me, congratulating me on my relationship with her, suggesting a vast, unspoken network of individuals who shared a similar fascination. This notion made me feel as if I belonged to a global brotherhood, united by our experiences with Ivy. Despite not having been as intimately involved as others, her openness about her desires was clear. She was candid about her passion for intimacy, a trait not uncommon in people, yet her experiences seemed to dwarf those of many. We never delved into our past encounters, but rumors and whispers painted a picture of Ivy's extensive history, hinting at a record-breaking level of experience. Her adventures, rumored to include wildly unconventional experiences, were beyond my comprehension. My hesitation wasn't about morals but rather a mix of intimidation and the daunting task of living up to the experiences of someone so unrestrained. The thought of becoming just another fleeting memory to her was disheartening, with some memories being fleeting and others, perhaps, leaving lasting impressions. Despite my feelings for Ivy, I struggled with envisioning a shared future. My desire for a mutually exclusive relationship seemed incompatible with her lifestyle. Even amid her proclamations of affection, I couldn't shake the notion of her ongoing escapades. Recalling a day when I fetched Ivy and her children for a picnic after her early shift highlighted the complexities of our situation. While she resolved a dispute among coworkers, the reality of our differing paths and the crowded journey in my car with her kids underscored the challenges we faced in aligning our lives. The tension was palpable as the men nearly clashed over one using the other's favored mop. Ivy's intervention was revealing. "He knows it's your mop, Steve," she reasoned with one of them. But the mops are here for the store's cleanliness, so if you're not using it, it's okay for someone else to. With a friendly nudge, she added, right. The man's smile and nod towards Ivy spoke volumes to me. It was clear there was a history between them, and it seemed likely to continue. His expression hinted at future expectations. I had regarded Ivy as something personal, akin to how Steve felt about his mom. However, her perspective seemed to be that she was free to interact with others when we weren't together, which shifted my view. I left the store discreetly, returning to the car where Ivy's children waited. Jasmine, her eldest, innocently asked about our relationship. Tim, what did my mommy do to become your girlfriend? She queried. Curious, I inquired, who said your mom was my girlfriend? Everyone, she replied, mentioning her grandmother's hope for Ivy to settle down to keep me in her life. I gently probed if Jasmine understood these adult matters, relieved she was somewhat naive. Her childlike offer to replace her mother if needed reflected her misunderstanding, which I kindly addressed. As Ivy joined us, she teased about Jasmine's early interest in boys and mentioned my visit to the store, wondering why I hadn't waited for her. The day's outing went well, although I kept my distance from Ivy, contemplating our relationship's reality and future. My affection for her was profound, yet the insights from the day led me to question our compatibility and the viability of my plans for us, especially considering the commitment I had been contemplating. In my mind, I always thought Ivy was sincere when she said I was the only man she dated and let near her children, besides their fathers. I believed it meant something significant. Now, I realized she never lied, but I had let my naivety get the better of me. I assumed her exclusivity in dating extended to all aspects of her personal life. Clearly, I was mistaken. Visiting the dentist, we braced for discomfort, accepting temporary pain to avoid long-term health issues. Similarly, I visited Ivy's store when she wasn't there, seeking clarity. Marcia, upon recognizing me, mentioned Ivy's absence and suggested I speak with Dave and Steve in the back, though she cautioned they were often unproductive. Dave was perched on a crate in the back, identifiable by his name tag. After exchanging greetings, I sought confidentiality before inquiring about his relationship with Ivy. Initially tense, Dave relaxed upon realizing I wasn't confrontational, admitting their involvement started when he first began working there, which had recently intensified. Steve, joining in, queried Dave about the nature of their increased encounters. Dave, a bit irritated, confirmed their intensified liaisons, questioning if the same was true for the truck drivers. As their debate escalated, I departed, overhearing Steve's regretful outburst about potentially jeopardizing their situation with Ivy. Assuring them I harbored no grudges, I left, feeling an immense void within. I then reconsidered a previously declined job offer at a state university, a decision influenced by my desire to stay close to Ivy, despite its advantages in salary and status. He mentioned that, to his knowledge, they hadn't found a candidate yet, and he was quite confident that the position was mine if I wanted it. I expressed my interest, and he immediately made a call. After hanging up, he informed me that I could drive to the state capitol to meet with them the next evening. I reminded him of my class the following evening, but he assured me that he'd arrange for someone to cover it. I thanked him and then headed to my evening class. Upon arrival, I noticed Ivy standing by the door. After opening it, I began writing problems on the board, and she, along with the other students, entered and settled into their seats. The class proceeded as normal, with Ivy attentively watching and smiling at me from the front row. As I circulated the room assisting students, I took a moment to sit beside her. I suggest you try solving some problems to improve your chances next time, I advised her, adding, I hope your next instructor is kind to you. Her expression changed, and the smile faded. Tim, I've never been treated as well as you treat me, she confided, revealing a note from a heart-shaped locket she wore, indicating her feelings matched the sentiment of the note. I think about you all day, she confessed, mentioning her children's fondness for me, especially Jasmine, who is usually reticent but open with me. My emotions surged, but I maintained composure through the class. In the final hour, I summarized the key points for the upcoming final exam, and the class appreciated the take-home practice test I distributed. Ivy inquired about our plans, to which I explained my early commitment in the state capitol the following day. Her smile broadened, relieved that my preoccupation was due to the trip, not a dwindling interest. She playfully chided me for worrying her, half expecting a breakup speech she assumed was common in such situations. Have you ever been on the receiving end of such a talk? I asked her, shifting the conversation from her lighthearted jest. She gave me a look as if I had posed the most absurd question imaginable. I've never had a man not want to continue seeing me, for any reason, she declared. But you'll soon see for yourself. Her grin was predatory, like a predator eyeing its prey. I escorted Ivy to her vehicle, and as she climbed in, I headed towards my own car. Aren't you forgetting something? She inquired. Apologies, goodbye Ivy. We'll meet again after my return, I replied. Then, I hopped into my car and drove off, leaving her bemused. The following day, I was shown around the sprawling campus of the State University by Dr. Colleen Bennett, the head of the math department. She was a striking woman, tall and slender, with an aura of confidence. Our conversation was engaging as we toured the campus. She inquired about my career aspirations and seemed impressed with my responses. She outlined the salary for the position and mentioned they were considering several candidates. She explained that most other applicants lacked either teaching experience or sufficient expertise in mathematics, so if I was interested and could decide promptly, the position could be mine. Is now prompt enough? I asked. You're hired, she announced. When can you start? She lightly touched my arm as she spoke. I need a week to finish teaching and submit grades. Plus, I have to settle my affairs at home and find accommodation here. 2 weeks should suffice, right? Do you have a partner or someone to consider in your move? She queried. Just me and Eartha, I responded, a tinge of sadness in my voice. Who's Eartha? She inquired. You'll meet her soon, I said with a smile. Is she attractive? She probed further. Absolutely, I replied, my voice filled with affection. Reaching the parking lot, Colleen seemed more reserved, less talkative, and no longer made physical contact. I offered to help you settle in or take care of your house, she said with a hint of disappointment. But it seems Eartha can handle that. I doubt she specializes in that, I replied with a smile. But feel free to check with her. How can I reach her? She asked plainly. We share the same number, I said. But you don't need to call, she's right here. Colleen burst into laughter. Eartha is your car, she exclaimed. What else did you think she was? I inquired, feigning ignorance. Colleen promised to touch base with me and visit over the weekend, bringing along information about apartments near the university and on campus. Driving home, my thoughts wandered. I pondered the playful banter I could engage in with Colleen. She was undoubtedly attractive, arguably more so in a traditional sense than Ivy. Yet, when placed side by side, Ivy seemed to capture more attention. It was akin to comparing an idealized figurine with a living, breathing person. Despite the figurine's precise features designed for allure, it remained just a lifeless imitation. Colleen, with her tall and slender frame, had her own appeal, but Ivy radiated a vibrant and compelling presence. Ivy had an undeniable magnetism that overshadowed Colleen's refined features. I also considered the deeper contrasts. Ivy, as it stood, couldn't fulfill the role I needed, whereas Colleen might fit the bill. Sooner or later, Ivy and I needed to have a crucial conversation about her infidelities. She might deny it or temporarily cease her actions, but trust seemed irreparable. The thought of constantly doubting her fidelity was unbearable. A clean break appeared to be the most sensible path forward. Arriving home earlier than anticipated, I resolved to confront Ivy in person, to earnestly convey my feelings and discuss our situation. Perhaps there was a chance to salvage something. I drove to Ivy's mother's place, intending to ask her to watch the kids while Ivy and I had a serious talk over dinner in a mature setting. I hoped this would underscore my transparency and allow us to part ways amicably, preserving the friendship that marked our beginning. As I approached her street, I didn't pause, noticing that Jazz and Ivy's other children were already there. Maybe Ivy was busy. I tried calling her, but her phone went directly to voicemail. I decided to leave a note for Ivy to call me back. As I arrived at her place, I saw her vehicle parked outside. Walking up to her front door, I pressed the doorbell. Through the living room window, I caught a glimpse of Ivy, engaged in an intimate moment with someone else. Our eyes met as she looked up, and for a brief moment, time seemed to slow down. I could see her in a way I never had before, her appearance strikingly different from what I remembered. The shock and complexity of my emotions were overwhelming, a mix of disgust and an inexplicable attraction. In that instant, Ivy noticed me, her expression turning to one of instant regret and despair. She seemed to try to speak, but only a soft sound escaped her. However, none of that seemed to matter to me. I turned away, heading back to my car, leaving before Ivy could reach the door. She was left standing there, visibly upset. Driving away, my phone began to ring, likely Ivy trying to reach out. I switched off the phone, feeling a strange sense of liberation. Despite everything, I felt an overwhelming love for Ivy, yet what I witnessed should have devastated me. Instead, I found myself oddly euphoric, the music from my car stereo echoing my tumultuous feelings. Laughing into the night, I realized this twist of fate was for the best. Loving Ivy was a complex emotion, beyond the usual judgments and expectations. She lived by her own rules, untamed and free-spirited, which I both admired and resented. Our relationship was doomed not by lack of love, but by our incompatible expectations. In witnessing her actions, the inevitable end of our connection became a reality, yet it was a conclusion that allowed me to retain my dignity, understanding that our paths were meant to diverge. It turned out to be the best outcome from a difficult situation for both of us. I had the chance to start afresh with someone more aligned with my values, although I doubted I'd feel as deeply, which in its own way offered a sense of control in the relationship. Ivy, meanwhile, could resume her social life with as many people as her schedule allowed, seeking volume over the depth we had. The following day, while preparing the test papers for the finals in my classes, my teaching assistant, secretary came in. "Tim, you have a couple of visitors," she announced. "Let Ivy know I'm occupied and will catch up with her in class," I replied. "Had it been her, I would have said you were out and not bothered you," she retorted. I've done that the previous time she visited. Actually, it's a young girl and an elderly woman waiting. In the hallway, I encountered Ivy's mother and Jasmine. Jazz rushed to embrace me, expressing her fears of losing our connection. Jazz, you've got it all wrong, I comforted her. I'm merely starting a new job a bit further away. We might not meet as often, but I'll ensure you have my new number to stay in touch, all right? She agreed, visibly calm yet still somber. After sending Jazz to wait in the car, Ivy's mom expressed her gratitude, confiding the truths her daughter had revealed and inquiring about my well-being. I'm managing, I assured her with a smile. She shared her close friendship with Sally Erickson from the jewelry store and her awareness of my ring selection dilemma. She encouraged me to drop the facade, empathizing with the situation. Post their departure, I crafted an email to Ivy, expressing gratitude for our shared moments and the joy they brought. I informed her of my job change and impending move, wishing her the best. I concluded by addressing her academic standing, suggesting she needn't attend the final exam as her previous scores precluded passing. On Saturday, Colleen came over to my place to help me pack up and shut down my house. Her long auburn hair was styled in 2 ponytails, and she was wearing very short shorts that showcased her long legs impressively. She wore a pale blue blouse, casually unbuttoned at the top, which occasionally offered glimpses of her neckline. Throughout the day, I noticed the top button would sometimes come undone, prompting her to fix it with a playful smile, each time seemingly taking a bit longer to rebutton. While we were securing the shutters, I noticed a truck pulling away from my driveway. I suspected it was Ivy, possibly wanting to talk about an email I had sent her. Colleen left me some brochures for apartments she had selected for me to consider. I mentioned that I'd visit them during the week. My classes on Monday and Tuesday went smoothly, and I was particularly looking forward to Wednesday's class, as it was my last. I needed to grade the papers with my teaching assistant, and then I could start anew. I hadn't given much thought to my Tuesday evening class, which usually felt special because of Ivy's presence. Without her, it seemed like just another final exam. I considered letting my assistant handle it, but decided it would be more professional to personally bid farewell to my students. I was caught off guard when Ivy entered the classroom and took her seat, her gaze fixed on me. Despite the room being filled with attractive students, none captivated me as Ivy did. Her intense eyes, though red and swollen, seemed to reach deep within me. As the test started, she motioned for me to step into the hallway. I hesitated, but she approached, whispering a plea for a private word, hinting at a public confrontation if I refused. I suggested we talk after class to avoid a scene. She questioned whether I would simply leave after the test, to which I reassured her of my reliability and honesty throughout our acquaintance, which seemed to bring her some comfort, though tears still escaped her eyes. Then I deserve the benefit of the doubt now, I said. She sank into her chair, her gaze fixed on me throughout the class, as if she was ready to spring into action if I made a move towards the door. As the last student handed in his paper and lingered to discuss the test, Ivy interjected sharply. Look, it would be more useful to email your insights so they can be preserved for future reference, she said with a biting edge to her tone. After he departed, Ivy turned to me, her voice laden with expectation. We have things to discuss tonight, she stated firmly. No, Ivy, I replied firmly. We agreed to talk, and that's all we're going to do. So, let's talk. She seemed frustrated. Just like that, start talking. She questioned. It feels like you've already dismissed what I have to say. Why can't we find a comfortable spot to talk things through? Ivy, I sighed, tiredly. That's right, you and your new friend moved our swing, she accused. She's not my friend, Ivy, I corrected. She's my new boss. No, Tim, you're her boss, Ivy countered sharply. I could tell immediately that she was overly friendly towards you, and I didn't like it. I didn't expect this from you, Tim, she continued, her voice softening. Do you realize how much you mean to me? I've never felt this way about anyone before. Doesn't that matter to you? You have a strange way of showing affection, I remarked. If this is your version of love, I'd prefer to stay clear. We're not committed, Ivy. We've never made any promises to each other. We're just friends. That's not true, she retorted, her frustration evident. You said you loved me, and I believed it. I felt it too. But now, seeing all this, it feels meaningless. Everyone's been saying I'm foolish. Even my mother thought you had intentions of something more serious, she said, trying to gauge my reaction. Wow, you were about to ask me, right? I nodded, and she began to cry again. Tim, please, she implored, I'm truly sorry. Give me another chance, I promise I'll change. No, Ivy, I whispered. It's part of who you are, as natural as breathing. Even if you stopped, you'd likely start again, and we'd be back here, or you'd grow to resent me for being in your way. It's better to end things now. Tim, to others, I was just a passing fling. But with you, I felt cherished. You looked at me with love, something I can't just forget, she argued. Goodbye, Ivy, I said, gently kissing her forehead before leaving her in the classroom, her tears flowing freely. Over the next 6 years, my life took on new directions. I married Colleen, finished my education, and progressed in my career. My relationship with Colleen was deeply rooted in friendship and love until her sudden passing from a stroke. During her last moments, she expressed gratitude for our life together, though she regretted not having children. She acknowledged my bond with Jasmine, showing how I still played a significant role in her life. Colleen admitted she felt my love for her was different from what I had with Ivy, yet she was content with the love I provided. After her death, I reflected on our time together, realizing I did love her deeply, albeit cautiously, influenced by my past with Ivy. Time passed, and life's changes led me to become the dean of the math department at a community college. Moving back to my house, I took my time settling in. Jasmine, now a striking young woman, was the only one aware of my return. She possessed her mother's best traits, capturing attention with her grace and poise, reminiscent of Ivy in many ways. She seemed like the kind of woman who would bring joy to someone's life one day. That said evening, as I was putting the final touches on making my house comfortable again, the creak of my porch swing caught my attention. Initially, I dismissed it as the wind, but the sound persisted, prompting me to investigate. Jasmine, I've told you before, wandering around at night isn't safe with all the unpredictable people out there. You might not be my biological daughter, but... My words trailed off when I realized it wasn't Jasmine on the swing. The woman sitting there was slightly fuller figured and her face bore more lines, yet unmistakably, it was Ivy. She might have been your daughter, you know. We could have had a family. I desired you so much, Tim, she confessed. There's often a difference between desire and necessity, Ivy, I responded, taking a seat beside her. Jazz told me about your wife, she continued. I resented her for being with you, and I'm sorry you're hurting. Colleen didn't steal me from you, Ivy. You pushed me away. I'm just not one to blend into the crowd. I manage well with others, but sharing my personal space has never been my strong suit. We were never meant to last, I explained. That's nonsense, she countered. I would have done anything for you. Back then, it would have been hard, but I've grown wiser with time. She gestured to the empty space beside her on the swing. Tim, I'm only 32, and you're 30. We have our whole lives ahead. The last 6 years have been tough without you. Letting you go was my greatest regret. I see my friends settling down, their lives filled with imperfect partners who, despite their flaws, love them deeply, and it makes me envious. And it frustrates me when I hear someone say their spouse restricts them from doing something. It makes me feel so alone, she admitted, tears streaming down her face. And at parties, it's the worst, feeling unprotected and vulnerable. While others are defended by their partners, I'm left feeling exposed and disregarded. I really messed that up, didn't I? Everyone seems to care, but nobody truly cares about me. I have 6 children, and I've been with so many men, I've lost count. Yet I can't get anyone to take me seriously or invite me out, she expressed. Many of my married friends' husbands prefer my company over their wives, yet I'm here without a partner of my own. Her voice rose, tears streaming down her face. My mother was right. I had one real chance. One man who adored me so much, he would have done anything for me. One man ready to marry me, even with my 3 kids. And I squandered it. Tim, do you realize you're the only man who's dated me more than once? The only one who took me out just to spend time with me. The only one who stayed longer than a brief moment without rushing into intimacy. I feel like I'm just a laughing stock, she lamented. Maybe the people around don't see your true worth, Ivy, I responded. She tilted her head back, and despite the toll of the past years on her, her voice and laughter remained enchanting. How am I special? She inquired. You're the only one who's ever seen me that way. She rose, pacing the porch. How long have you been back? She queried. 4 days, I replied. When did Jasmine know you were coming back? She probed. She found out last week, I answered. She was there to greet me when I arrived. She didn't tell me, Ivy said. I don't think she wanted me to know you were back. She's not fond of me anymore. My daughter sees you as her father and blames me for driving you away, feeling embarrassed by me. What about you? She pressed. What do you mean, Ivy? I inquired. Don't mess with me, Tim, no mind games, please. I can't handle that, she yelled. For 6 years, you've attended every event our daughter was in. You've seen every volleyball match, art show, and never missed her birthday. Whenever she needs something, you're there. You've even been to 4 of Michael's baseball games this year. I love my son, but let's be honest, baseball isn't his strong suit. Even Rose knows you wouldn't miss her birthday. I suppose you're not very familiar with my youngest kids, but I imagine you'd be more involved in their lives than I am. The thing I'm curious about, Tim, is whether you've ever inquired about me. Is there a slim possibility for us to reconnect as friends? Do you still harbor any feelings for me? Honestly, Ivy, I'm uncertain about my feelings towards you, I confessed. Observing the sadness in her expression, I felt an unexpected surge of empathy. Please, Ivy, allow me to clarify. As she started to rise, I gently grasped her hand, urging her to stay seated beside me on the swing. It feels like an eternity, yet it was just 6 years ago when we met, Ivy. Perhaps you're unaware, but I was quickly smitten with you. You might not recall, but when I departed, I was on the verge of proposing. You could have been one of those committed women you mentioned. I paused, reflecting on the past. I was incredibly fond of you, I admitted. She nestled into my embrace, raising her eyes to mine. My feelings for you never waned, she whispered. I couldn't help but chuckle. Why do you find this amusing? She demanded. I wasn't the one who left after a misunderstanding we never resolved. I'm just the person who was told of love, yet was not given a chance to mend things. Nor did I flee to another city and marry someone else. My commitment to us never faltered. I always loved you. I never desired anyone else. Ivy, in these 6 years, yes, I married. I attempted to build a life. It was a mess. Colleen and I should have remained just friends. A part of that failure was my inability to move past you. I should have allowed myself to feel the loss. Then, I should have entered a phase of resenting all women, eventually focusing that resentment solely on you. But I didn't. I went directly from loving you to trying to love Colleen, only for her to realize that she couldn't overshadow the idealized image of you in my mind. She was absolutely right, Ivy asserted. No, Ivy, I responded firmly. She was mistaken, as much as one could be. Colleen was attractive, more so than you. She was kinder, more nurturing, and trustworthy. In reality, she was a better person than you, Ivy. But she was up against the idealized version of you in my mind. No real person could compete with that fantasy. Ivy, we were together for just 3 months. We hardly knew each other. It's easy to maintain excitement in a new relationship. It's much harder as years go by. We never even had an intimate relationship. That was on you, Tim. I was open to being close from our first date. But in your eyes, I was this perfect, untouchable figure, said Ivy. I prefer admiring a woman from afar rather than constantly monitoring her. Ivy, let's break it down, shall we? After all, our love for numbers brought us together. I moved away, and the reasons aren't important right now. I relocated and married someone else. That means I've been with only one person for the last 6 years. Meanwhile, Ivy, in your proclaimed love for me, how many have you been involved with? Ivy stayed quiet, so I pressed on. You have 3 more children now. Darren is 5, right? So, barely 3 months after I left, you were already with someone else and expecting. The kids all have different fathers, which shows you've been with at least 3 men since I moved. And it's clear there have been others, probably many. You seem upset that I got married. You've had more than enough chances to settle down, Ivy. I can't imagine you were just waiting around for me, without knowing if I'd ever return. Why didn't you marry, Ivy? It seems you're at that stage in your life. She muttered something too soft to catch. I heard rustling in the bushes next to the house but assumed it was just the wind. I didn't catch that, Ivy, I said. No one ever proposed, okay. She snapped. You saw me as someone unique. To everyone else, I was just easy. Everyone wanted a moment with me, but you were the one who wanted more. I've always been easygoing. Only one person has ever said they loved me, and sadly, he's the one I never got close to. She tried to walk away, but I stopped her. Where are you going? I thought you wanted to talk, I said. You can't leave just because the conversation is tough. Why are you here if you don't want to talk, Ivy? I asked. I wanted to see you, and maybe I was hoping. She trailed off. Why come back here, Tim? You could have gone anywhere. You're right, Ivy, I could work anywhere. But honestly, I've never fully moved on from you. I'm still somewhat resentful, but we need to get past that. Our daughter deserves a stable life, Ivy, and I'm committed to ensuring she has that. We need to cooperate for her sake. After all, many couples stay together for the children. Are you asking me to marry you? She asked, her voice laced with disbelief. No, Ivy, that's not what I meant, I clarified. When I left, Jazz seemed to really connect with me. I didn't want to be just another guy passing through her life. So, I left my number with her and your mom. Jazz started calling right away. I figured it would be a short-term thing, but it wasn't. We've kept in touch since. I know Jazz isn't my biological daughter, but my feelings for her are as strong as they could be. She's 17, Ivy. I want to see her through the milestones of life, like college and learning to drive, all the things teenagers go through. I want to be there for the trivial things, like when she blasts her music to tune out the world, or when she needs advice about boys. I want to be the one she turns to, and the one who walks her down the aisle someday. Is Jasmine the only reason you came back? She queried. There's more to it, I admitted. What else? She probed. Michael needs someone to teach him baseball, to throw a ball and swing a bat, I said with a half smile. Tim, please be serious, she implored. We had something truly special. I know I ruined it, but I've grown. I understand myself better now and know what I want. I'd do anything for a second chance. I promise it would be different this time. Ivy, we're just not on the same page, I stated. Our expectations for a relationship aren't aligned. It's better for us to remain friends and accept the reality. But Tim, I can change, for you, she insisted, desperation in her voice. How will you know what I'm capable of if you don't give me the opportunity? If you truly care for me and are willing to support me, I believe I can be the partner you deserve. Just consider it. She rose from the swing, kneeling before me. Please, Tim, let's start as friends, I suggested reluctantly. Live your life, and I'll live mine. If we progress to dating, then we'll address those expectations. I want to start at dating, she countered. I have my own set of expectations too. And what might those be? I inquired, curious. Tim, it's about connection for me. I need to feel loved and valued consistently. If we're together, you won't have to doubt my loyalty as long as we maintain our emotional bond. But without that, I find myself feeling lost. Ivy, how can you be so sure about my compatibility as a partner? I questioned. You'll be great, she replied with a confident grin. It's all about getting to know each other better, and we're going to have plenty of time for that. In the following weeks, Ivy and I spent a significant amount of time together. My visits were often casual, just to see her and the kids, and we engaged in various activities. Managing 6 children was a formidable task. Ivy's mother had been remarkable in her efforts to support the family. Ivy's home was quaint but cramped with the lively bunch. I envisioned a future where Ivy and the kids could move into my larger house, which boasted 5 bedrooms and an additional apartment over the garage. We had discussed what it would look like if we decided to cohabit. I suggested that Ivy and I could use the master bedroom. Michael could have his own room as the eldest, and the other children could share 2 per room, with Jasmine occupying the apartment above the garage. However, Ivy had other plans. She proposed that we move into the apartment to have our space, leaving the master bedroom for Jasmine. This was to ensure that Jasmine couldn't secretly have visitors without our knowledge. I couldn't help but laugh at the idea. It's important to be aware of these things, Ivy remarked humorously. My laughter resumed. I doubt there will be an issue, I said confidently. Even the best plans have their weaknesses, Ivy pointed out. I'm speaking from experience. But Jasmine is different, I countered. She's committed to her values, having made a promise of purity on her 14th birthday, planning to stick to it until a serious commitment is made. Ivy seemed puzzled. Why would she choose that? She inquired. Don't you ever talk to her? I prodded gently. You once mentioned how she's always been reserved, more so with you than even her biological father. I smiled, recalling the conversation. Ivy continued, Jasmine is selective about who she lets into her life. After you left, she held me responsible, and since then, our communication has suffered. I'm hopeful that with you back, our relationship can mend. Your return means a lot to me. Our friendship was brief. Ivy, always direct, suggested, let's dine at a fancy restaurant. When I hesitated, she pressed, I've seen your pay stub. You can afford it. You're earning well for what you do. Fine, Ivy, I agreed. I'll see you at Texas Roadhouse after work. No, she retorted, pick me up, and don't forget the flowers and to dress up. I'll wear a snug dress that will turn heads and leave them guessing. Is this how you treat all your friends? I inquired. Forget about friendship, Tim. This is a date, she declared. Until then, our outings were casual, nothing more than friendly hugs. Her personal life was her own, and we were just friends. Ivy, are you sure about this? I probed. In response, Ivy grabbed my hand with a suggestive gesture. This is what I want, she implied, her intent clear. This is a one-time offer, Ivy, I warned. It's yours whenever you want, she assured, her meaning unmistakable. I wondered why I felt like I was making a significant, irrevocable choice. This also means, she continued firmly, that your colleagues should keep their distance. But once you're with me, you won't care about them. I picked Ivy up at 7 p.m. She had never looked more stunning, glowing in a short black dress that highlighted her figure. At the restaurant, she captured everyone's attention. Men were distracted, and women looked on with envy. We sat in a secluded booth. The evening started formally, but Ivy soon moved closer, ending up almost on my lap. Feeling anxious? She inquired. Not at all, I replied, puzzled by her question. Men can be so clueless, she remarked. You're there, all smiles and carefree, thinking everything's set, confident in the evening's promise. Ivy, I'm offering you an out. If you have doubts, we can just be friends, I suggested. Her expression was one of shock. She retrieved a locket from her neckline, containing a faded note. For 6 years, this note was my most cherished possession, she confessed. Despite many coming and going in my life, none stirred the feelings these 4 words did. I've been waiting for what feels like eternity to truly start living, and tonight is that beginning. Everything changes from here. I casually perused the dessert menu, but Ivy's abrupt call for the check signaled the evening's shift. The other patrons seemed envious, sensing the night's significance. Indeed, that night altered everything. Previously, I believed I cared for Ivy, now I was certain. I avoided lofty expectations, knowing reality often falls short of fantasies, but I was mistaken. Rushing into my house, we hurried upstairs. Ivy, full of urgency, hinted at her desires. I, however, chose a gentler approach, calming her excitement with a tender embrace and a soft kiss, escalating in intensity with each moment. As she relaxed, her tension eased under my comforting touch. We moved closer to the bed, continuing our intimate exchange. Standing her up, I gently removed her dress, and she sat beside me, shoeless. My attentions became more soothing, tracing a path from her lips down, eliciting a mix of surprise and delight from her. Tim, what's happening? I feel so strange, she whispered, as I continued to tenderly explore, her response growing more fervent with each caress. Tim, what are you doing? She asked. As I moved closer to her, she began to shift restlessly. The slightest touch seemed to send her into a frenzy. Tim, she exclaimed. I continued to caress her, feeling her intense reaction. Oh no, Tim, she gasped. Not like that. My actions seemed to overwhelm her with sensation. She pulled me closer, her breath ragged with excitement. At that moment, I was completely captivated by her. With no hesitation, I gently eased closer, feeling the intense connection between us. "Take it slow, baby, let's savor this," I whispered. "We have the whole night." I proceeded with care, each movement deliberate and full of anticipation. The experience was unexpectedly intense. The connection felt almost tangible, like a series of waves resonating with each move. The pace quickened, each motion amplifying the sensation, like a current running through us. Ivy's reactions were beyond anything I had imagined. Her movements were astonishing, surpassing even the wildest of dreams. The experience with Ivy was mesmerizing, a testament to the allure she possessed. The intensity only grew, and after a moment's rest, we switched, with her taking the lead. Ivy's movements were spellbinding, showcasing a passion that was incomparable. "Tim," she whispered softly, "let's get closer." Already wanting a change. I teased, caught in the moment. But she was referring to something else, seeking an even deeper connection. Our embrace intensified, each movement more fervent than the last, the sound of our union echoing around us. The bed creaked under the strain of our fervor. Eventually, Ivy's energy peaked in a crescendo, and I was consumed by the moment. She fell into my arms, and we shared a tender, intimate moment, lost in the afterglow of our passionate encounter. "Oh dear," she exclaimed. "You promised we had the entire night. What's happening here?" Soon after, we found ourselves in each other's arms again, moving gently and slowly, gazing into each other's eyes. It seemed like we drifted off to sleep in the midst of that tender motion. The next morning, I was roused by a peculiar sensation. You might assume it was something erotic, but it wasn't. It felt like tiny drops of water on my hand. Coupled with my need to use the bathroom, this sensation quickly brought me to full alertness. She stirred at my movement. "Ivy, why are you crying?" I inquired, puzzled by her distress. "Didn't you want last night to happen?" She merely turned to face me, then hurried into the bathroom, sobbing even more. I cautiously followed her, and after attending to my own needs, I saw Ivy at the sink, looking at her reflection. I started the shower and guided her in with me. Although she resisted my attempts to kiss her, she allowed me to embrace her, yet her tears continued. I gently washed her, trying to soothe her. Her laughter briefly surfaced as I playfully cleaned her, yet she remained silent. After the shower, I dried her off and offered her one of my old shirts and socks. We then moved to the porch swing with coffee for her and tea for me, hoping to talk things through. "Ivy, what's bothering you?" I probed. "How could you do this to me?" She burst out, tears welling up again. "Ivy, it was just one night. We knew it might not work out. We shouldn't let this upset everything." I tried to reason with her. "How can we just be friends after this?" She retorted sharply. "Tim, I've never felt anything like this. I've been with others, but no one has touched me the way you did. It was like you knew every part of me. I feel like I've lost so much time. If only I hadn't made those mistakes," she continued, her voice filled with regret. "We could have been so happy together, living our lives, sharing moments like these. I felt truly cherished. Ivy, we didn't just have sex last night, we connected on a deeper level. It was more than that, it was an expression of our love," I explained. She turned away, her voice tinged with pain. "Tim, you've hurt me too," she admitted. Puzzled, I asked, "How did I hurt you, Ivy?" She hesitated before speaking. "You aroused me intensely, and I desired you completely," she confessed. "In the moment, I wanted us to be closer, to share everything. But you intensified our encounter, driving me to distraction. The next morning, I was left questioning your actions, finding no good explanations," she continued. "Is it because you fear I'm unwell, or you're wary of committing to what society labels me, fearing a permanent bond?" she inquired, seeking my truth. "I must be honest, Ivy. My feelings are complex," I admitted. "Your past relationships and the health concerns they imply warrant caution. We need to consider our health seriously. And regarding a family, I need to know we're on solid ground before considering such a significant step. I don't want to be a fleeting figure in your life. I aspire for us to build a lasting bond." "And what's the other reason?" she probed. "It's the fear of heartbreak, Ivy," I confessed. "I cherish you immensely, but the thought of enduring that pain again holds me back." "I promise you, Tim, that won't happen," she assured me, embracing me tightly. "What we shared last night was too precious to risk. The idea of you with someone else is unbearable." Her smile returned as she drew her knees up, playfully hinting at her bareness beneath. "Last night was a first in many ways," she reflected. "Past encounters were fleeting and impersonal, but last night was genuinely beautiful. It was the first time someone has been so tender and attentive to me." "Really?" I asked, surprised by her revelation. "Never," she echoed. "But they all see me as unclean, unworthy. Why would they desire such intimacy where others have been? Only someone who truly loved me would." Indeed, Ivy and I were in love. The next 3 years flew by. Ivy remained faithful, as far as I knew, and we crafted a nearly perfect life. Yet, there was one issue, Jasmine. Over those years, Jazz grew into the town's most stunning woman. At 20, halfway through her math degree, she followed in my footsteps successfully. Working part-time as my assistant, she had her own car. My affection for her was immense. All of Ivy's children called me Dad, though Ivy and I weren't married. But Jazz, she called me Tim. The real trouble was the growing rift between Jazz and Ivy, deteriorating to the point where they couldn't bear each other's company. Jazz had moved into the apartment above my garage 16 months prior, becoming as secluded as I was before meeting Ivy. My daughter was unique, inheriting all of Ivy's finest traits and then some. Jazz was incredibly beautiful, which oddly became a problem. To my knowledge, she never dated. Despite the interest from many college boys and my attempts to guide them on winning her favor, she rejected them all, emphatically. Rumors circulated about her being a harsh lesbian, given her stern rejections of both men and women, until eventually, everyone just left her alone. The exception was me, though she was often tough on me too. If I had been more observant, I might have understood her better. Ivy and I lived separately but often stayed over at each other's places, with the kids freely moving between homes. Most mornings, Jazz and I shared tea on my porch swing before driving to work in our car, hers driven with a daring that always made the journeys exciting. These mornings were precious to me, feeling genuinely familial with Jazz, even though I wasn't her biological father. Our routine only paused when Ivy and I spent nights together. Despite efforts, Jazz refused to join us, distancing herself especially from her mother, whose name she seemed to detest. Life seemed cyclical, with recurring themes. I had just passed on a dean position at the university, content with my life, and contemplating formalizing my relationship with Ivy by marrying her and adopting all the children legally. I envisioned having a large, celebratory family gathering for it. Discussing this with Jazz was emotionally charged. We had connected deeply on a related topic the first summer after my return. Ivy called, requesting I collect Jazz from school. Upon arrival, Ivy appeared anxious on her porch, flanked by her mother and a middle-aged man. I never let him inside, she stated. He stayed in his car until my mother arrived. I was never alone with him. Ivy, I trust you, I assured. The man approached with a limp, frequently glancing at Ivy, and extended his hand. You must be Tim, he remarked, a hint of sadness in his voice. I've heard much about you. Before he could continue, Jazz brushed past him, entering the house without acknowledgement. Inside, Jazz was serenely completing her homework. Aren't you concerned about Mom and Brian? She inquired. My focus is on you, I replied. As I tried to discuss the man, Jazz interrupted, asserting her independence and loyalty to me, reflecting on our enduring connection despite past separations. Returning to the porch, the atmosphere was tense. Ivy kept her distance from Brian, who seemed eager to vanish from sheer mortification. Brian, let's give her some space, I suggested, taking his contact details for future communication. My comment, no one was right in this relationship. We will see the updated ending soon. Sub and like, and I will finish the ending as quick as possible.